Ladies and gentlemen, congratulations. If you're watching this prep, that means you have successfully completed your first speech. So give yourself a round of applause. I'm so proud of you. If my daughter was here, she would be clapping for you. She just learned how to do that when I recorded this video. All right, all joking aside, one thing to keep in mind before we move on to the next unit is that everything builds off of each other. So if you recall in Unit 1, some of the big ideas we discussed were windows and mirrors, identifying different types of support, finding that support via the internet, and then of course icing and pricing it in your outline in your speech. So if you're struggling with any of those things, particularly the latter, the support, the icing and pricing, please go back or make an appointment or come to my office hours so that way we can discuss that, because we are going to move on and start creating some new concepts. But like any poor foundation, if you try to build on that foundation and it's not a very good foundation, it's going to break. So you want to make sure that as we start building on new information, we have a strong foundation. All right, so in this prep, we're going to talk about the first step, which is learning how to organize a big topic into 2 main points. And then we're going to talk about audience analysis, because in this speech, you're going to pick a fictional audience and you're going to pretend you are delivering your speech to them. And your job is to connect with them in a very deep way so that they really listen to you and they find you credible. Now, even though you're presenting to your college student peers, guess what? You're going to pretend they're actually your audience. And so you're going to tell them who your audience is, and they're going to pretend to be that audience. And we're going to see how well you did in terms of really connecting with that specific audience. Spoiler alert, you can't use college students. Oh man, I know, it's no fun, but it'll work out well. All right, then after that, we're going to talk about outlining, particularly what do you do when you have 2 main points and 2 subpoints for each of those main points? How do you put this together and make sense out of it? We're going to talk about that. After that, we're going to learn how to make a visual aid using HaikuDeck, which is a really cool piece of software that really limits your visual aid to just one slide, or excuse me, one picture per slide. And then finally, we'll talk about opening, transitioning, and closing in a way that really encapsulates all your big ideas. So that's kind of a preview of everything. Just a reminder, it's always good before each speech to go to page 6 in your syllabus to see what the specific expectations are so that you don't lose easy points. The expectations do get a little bit more challenging, or rather higher, however you want to look at it, in each speech. So look at this carefully in your own time and make sure you understand exactly what's involved. So again, you don't lose easy points. All right, let's move on to question 1, which is topical organization. So I want you to take a guess. What do you think about when you hear the word topical? Is it, drum roll please, suntan lotion? No, not necessarily, but maybe you thought about that because it's topical. You apply it to your skin. Not necessarily, but good guess. Nope. Hopefully you thought about a pizza. Why a pizza? Well, because a whole pizza really, in terms of your speech, really equals too much information. So stop and think for a second. When was the last time you tried to eat way too much food, or particularly like a whole pizza by yourself? How did you feel afterwards? Probably pretty stuffed, right? Well, that's how your audience feels when you don't break the pizza into bite-sized slices, or essentially use topical organization to break your big idea into 2 main points. Now remember, in your last speech you had 1 main point, now you have 2 main points, so it's a little bit different. We're going to talk about how you take this big old topic and how you break it into 2 different but related main points. The reason why I use a pizza as an example is because when I was in college, we ate lots of pizza because it was inexpensive, it was really filling. But I tend to eat way too much pizza, and then I would be stuffed, and then I wouldn't be able to do anything afterwards. And so if you don't learn how to take a big chunk of information and break it down into bite-sized pieces for your audience to be able to use and apply, then it will be very hard for you to reach your audiences. And that's why I think of pizza, because we don't want you to make your audience feeling stuffed or overwhelmed. All right, so what's the definition? Well, it's essentially breaking a huge topic into 2 smaller but related main points. So that's kind of the basic definitions, but I want, or rather definition, singular, not plural. But I want you to think about it more in terms of what is the quickest way from point A to point B. It's a straight line, right? As you see on the left. The problem is that a lot of students, what they want to do is they want to take these 2 main points, but they're not really sure how they're related. So you kind of take your audience on this crazy journey, and we don't really know how they're related. But what I'm saying is, using a topical organizational pattern, we want there to be a direct connection between point A and point B. It has to be linear, it has to be efficient, and most importantly, it has to be logical. And so I want you to think about your speech being a direct line between A and B. We should know exactly where you're going. There should be no confusion. And you shouldn't have to take us through this crazy route to make us understand how A and B are related. Again, A and B are your 2 main points. All right, so how do we do this? Well, first thing is first, I know in your course pack we went from question 1 to question 3. I'm sorry, I made this change in your course pack over the summer. I forgot to change the question number. So if you're wondering where Q2 went or question 2 went, it's gone. Don't worry about it. Just pretend this is Q2. All right, so one thing you got to understand about organizing your main points, in just a second, we're going to talk about 3 different formats. And you're going to choose one of those, but it's going to be dependent on the audience you choose. So you won't make your final call in terms of what your 2 main points are going to be until after you've chosen your audience. But I want to at least show you the 3 different formats you can use so that as you move on and you do presentations or any type of communication, you do actually think about these 3 different ways to organize a big topic into 2 main points. All right, so the first way is the what and how. And now when you look at this, I want you to think about what being main point A and how being main point B, okay? Because this is going to make sense in just a second. All right, so when is this useful? Well, a what and how organizational format is most useful when you're talking to an audience that does not understand or know about the topic you're going to share with them. So in your first main point, what do? You talk about what you're going to talk about in your topic or what you think is important for them to know so that your audience can use the information in their lives or essentially apply what we learned in main point A in your main point B. Okay, so stop and let me explain this for a second. So you spend your first main point talking about the important parts of the topic that they don't know about. Again, your audience should not know about this. So then once they have that information, the next question is, okay, cool, so how do I use this information? So think about it in terms of you're comprehending the idea and then, okay, now I comprehend it, let's apply it. So think about it in terms of your prep, right? The left side of your prep is the what or the information you don't know about, and the right side is the application, how you use it. So what's an example? Power posing. We talked about this very briefly when we talked about speech anxiety. Power posing is this thing that gives you the adrenaline, it gives you the confidence to essentially make you feel more confident, okay? Did I just say it gives you the confidence to be more confident? I said that. The point I'm trying to make is power posing is this cool thing that you can do that provides greater confidence, okay? So you'd spend the first main point talking about power posing, and then the second main point, you would tell us how to apply it, right? Now that we know about this cool idea, we want to know how do we use this? And that's the whole idea of this informative speech, right? Is we want to offer some kind of application so that we can really get our audience excited about the information we have. But we have to limit how much information we share with them. So just to recap, the what and how is just a really basic format that's structured for audiences that don't know about the topic you're talking about. But here's the good news. You get to choose what your audience knows and what they don't know. So depending on the audience you choose and what you want to talk about, you can decide what format you want. This is one format. The second format is a why and how. So think about it again. The why is main point A and the how is main point B. So when is this useful? Well, it's useful when your audience knows about the topic, but it doesn't understand why this particular topic affects them, nor do they know how to change it. So they know about this topic, but they don't really know how it's affecting them. So main point A is why this topic is essentially important, or in other words, how it has the effect, or what effect it has on the audience's lives. It would just be easier if I read this, but I'm trying to speak conversationally. So here's the thing. The audience is not aware of the effects this topic has on their life, and so you need to tell them that and then give them tips on how they can overcome these effects. So think about it like procrastination as the example. Now, you cannot talk to college students in your fictional audience, right? You can't choose college students as your fictional audience. So I know that's kind of frustrating, but I want you to kind of get out of your comfort zone, and I want you to learn how to speak to diverse crowds. But if you were talking to college students, they probably would know a lot about procrastination, but what they wouldn't know is why it's affecting their life. So you want to give them 2 reasons why it affects their life, okay? And I use the word affects because I think that's the easiest way to summarize the why. And then, now that they know this affects them, guess what? You tell them how you can fix it. Now, some of you are probably wondering, Adam, is this persuasive? And the answer is it can be. You want to keep in mind that main point A is really to help us understand effects that we don't know, and main point B is how to overcome these, but it's not persuasive in that we don't give them a call to action. We're just offering these tips assuming that they want to know more about it, right? And in true persuasion, they're against what we're talking about, and we want to call them to action and do something very specific. In this case, we're just informing them. So that's why it's not persuasive, but you want to be careful here. All right, if neither of those work, then you can use a how and how format. Again, main point A is going to be about, well, I'll explain this in just a second, but you get the idea, right? So we want to think about a how and how as a demonstrative speech or a demonstration speech, essentially how to do something. So there's a lot of different things you can teach us how to do that might have value. Making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, probably not one of those things. Making a smoothie, probably not one of those things. You want to think about something very important that your audience needs to know. Remember, we want to be audience-centered. We want to think about their needs. We want to think about changing their needs. So if it's a demonstrative speech, I love saying demonstrative. It's so demonstrative of me to demonstrate the power of demonstrative. Okay, that's just too much. I'm sorry. But main point A is going to be the first step in learning how to do something, and then main point A will be the first step in learning how to do something, and then main point B is the second step in learning how to do that same thing. But you want to break down this learning into two different steps, okay? So you have to think about how you can break that down. A good example of this is exercise. So we all know the importance of exercise, and we all know what exercise is. So we know that a what, how would not work, and we know a why, how would not work either, because we already know the what and the why. So now you want to think creatively and, okay, who's my audience? Well, let's say it's young instructors like Adam Barragato, who has a family, who works a lot and who's also in school. And he knows exercise is important and he knows how to exercise, but he doesn't know how to make it work in his life. So you could get creative and you could talk about two different ways you could exercise in a busy schedule. You see what I did there? This could also work for budgeting. Two different ways that you can budget. Again, the idea is that you want to try to think about this as all application, because we know that we need to be doing this and we know what it is, but we don't know how to do it. So you can think like yoga as another example, meditation. We know what meditation is, we know why it's beneficial, but we don't know how to do it. So you want to spend your entire speech telling us how. All right, so I want you to look at these three. You got three different ways to organize your speech, but here's the key. You have to choose one of them based on your audience. Are you going to do a what, how, a why, how, or a how? It all depends, again, who your audience is. So what I want you to think about is there are two things that are missing. Number one, there's no what, or pro-con. Well, why is that? And a what, there's no application. So we don't want that type of speech, right? And a pro-con, you take a positive one, you subtract a one from it, and you get 0. So that's why you cannot do a pro-con speech. That's why we don't do a what speech, because neither of these offer any value to your audience. Okay, so moving forward, this is my example. You have to fill out your own. This is only to help you think about how you would fill out yours. You have to choose your own topic, so do not copy my topic. Mindsets in education is a topic that a lot of educators don't know about, so I chose the audience as educators because I think that it would give them the most value if they learned about this. So again, just keep in mind, without sounding over redundant, you fill out your own. Do not copy this. Just simply look at this as an example to help you think of your own topic and how you would break this up into the three different W's, okay? So one of the first W's is, why is this important? Well, if I'm talking to educators, then this might be important for them to know, because students can go through their whole lives thinking they're stupid just based on their GPA. Oh, that's why mindsets are important. Yes. Another reason why mindsets are important to know about, rather, or how they might affect your audience or someone related to your audience, is that students who think they're smart will sometimes cheat to cover up their confusion or their lack of understanding. So think about that for a second. As an educator, these are two good reasons why learning about mindsets in the classroom would be helpful. Now, that's assuming they know what mindsets are. If my audience doesn't know what mindsets are, then I would tell them there are two different types of mindsets. Now, this works out really well for me because I can break them down into a fixed and a growth mindset. Your topic won't always be this nice, and it won't always be this easy to break it up into two parts. Why are we breaking it up into two parts? Well, because each main point has two subpoints, okay? And so remember how in the main point, in the last speech, I asked you to be very specific in an area of life? I did that because I wanted you to think about the idea of breaking down a main point into two smaller but related subpoints. And so in the what, we're talking about what are two things we need to know about this topic. Well, in this case, there are two different mindsets. All right, so let me just go back real quick. I want to make sure we're on the same page. All right, so again, why is this important? You want to think about two reasons why your audience would either be affected by this or how they're affected by this, okay? In this case, we're talking about educators, so it's really the students who are affected by it. However, if your audience doesn't know about something, then you need to break it down and explain it to them in terms of what's most important. So out of all the information for mindsets, I think the two different mindsets are most important. All right, last but not least is the application. This is probably where you're going to struggle the most. You're going to be like, well, Adam, how do I find information that has application? Well, that's a great question. You need to think about it in terms of what can my audience do with this information? All right. So particularly when I talk about the idea of application, we're talking about making things, or excuse me, applying what we're learning. So if I'm an educator, how do I apply what we're learning about mindsets? Well, we know that a growth mindset is really important. And so how can we create growth mindsets? Well, one way is to change feedback from praise to praising effort. And another way is to teach intelligence is a muscle in order to change a student's mindset. So we have two different ways to help change a student's mindset from a fixed to a growth mindset. Again, going back to the what, this informs the how, or the why informs the how. Now, if my audience happen to know what mindsets were and knew why they were important, then I would have 2 main points on how to change mindsets for students. So I could even take these 2 subpoints right here and I could break them into 2 different main points and go into more detail. One of the interesting things about this is it's all the detail that you want to go into, but you only have 5 to 7 minutes. So you really got to think about what can you cover well to your audience in 5 to 7 minutes. And that's what makes it so hard. But if you fill this out before we come to class, which of course you're supposed to do, it's really going to help you talk to some people and kind of see what they're interested in. And then you can start to say, okay, well, which format do I want to use? Do I want to use a what, how? Do I want to use a why, how? Or do I want to use a how? It all depends on who your audience is and what they know and essentially what you say they know. All right, so I think that's everything. Please make sure to fill this out on your own. Think of a topic that you're interested in. If you know what format you want to choose, then by all means you can go and sign up. Either way, I hope this was helpful for you. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate to email me and let me know. Oh, you probably do have a question. You're probably wondering, Adam, I'm having trouble finding a topic. Well, the good news is there's 3 different ways that I think you can find a topic. The easiest way is just look at the TED Talks via Blackboard, find a topic you're interested in, and go forward with it. The news is another place you can look. And then finally, if you're looking for specific things in the news, you can set up a Flipboard account for free. It's an app you can download for your phone. It's really basic, it's really simple, and the best part is it helps identify different areas in the news you might be interested in, so it sends you all news articles about those specific ideas, whether it's education, whether it's graphic design, whether it's technology, it doesn't matter. If you're interested in one of those things, you can get some ideas through Flipboard. All right, email me if you have any questions. Bye-bye.